Accountability is key. You have to take accountability, but also you expect other people to take accountability. I've had to look in the mirror and I've had to look at myself and I've made mistakes, but it's how I've learned from those mistakes that are important. When things go wrong in your business, you need to find out why it went wrong. Was it avoidable? Who was accountable? Did you employ the right person? There's a number of things that you need to have a look at and see what happened within that process. The real change happens when we actually truly see who we are and take action and be accountable for our own actions. We're all human. People make mistakes. Brushing things under the carpet doesn't help anyone. We all have a responsibility to make the world a better place, which is the whole purpose of this podcast.
Welcome to Taking the Con Out of Construction, the straight-talking show that's changing the industry, one episode at a time. Small mistakes can cost big money, and even more in time. But a small investment in listening to this episode could help you avoid disputes, delays, and costly pitfalls, while giving you the know-how to stop problems before they start. Let's turn complexity into clarity and take the con out of construction.
Welcome back to Taking the Con Out of Construction. In this episode, we're focusing on accountability. Accountability isn't about blame or finger pointing, it's about clarity. When everyone knows what they're responsible for, decisions improve, communication sharpens, and problems get dealt with before they escalate. Michelle, you've worked with countless teams where accountability was either missing or misunderstood. Can you share why true accountability is so difficult to achieve in construction?
Yeah, if anyone that's followed me for a while, if you've had any interactions with me at all or know anything about me, you're going to know that I tell it how it is. And I think one of the issues in the world in general is accountability, and it's really getting on my nerves. And there's lots of people that are pointing fingers. For example, when the budget was coming out, you've got lots of people saying, oh, the rich should pay more. Well, actually, we should all do our bit. We should all be accountable. We shouldn't abuse the NHS system. We should pay the taxes that we're supposed to be paying. It's great pointing fingers at other people, but ultimately that's not the solution. Real change happens when we look at ourselves in the mirror, actually truly see who we are and take action and be accountable for our own actions. And also, don't get me wrong, we're all human. People make mistakes. Brushing things under the carpet doesn't help anyone. I think the main issue that I found in construction is people are very, very quick to blame everybody else. Contractors have a reputation of not paying anyone, and sometimes that's due because they don't pay people, because they're not accountable, because they're not managing their own costs properly, or whatever it may be. They don't have a decent contract. They didn't challenge their contract. There's a million and one things that can cause problems in construction. But ultimately, it's about accountability, because if you haven't priced something properly, that's on you. If you haven't looked at your contract, that's on you. If you haven't negotiated your contract, that's on you. You don't employ the right people, that's on you. You don't have the right systems and processes in place. Okay, you could blame one of your team, but ultimately, as a leader in business, it's not your team's responsibility, it's yours. The bucket stops with you. As a decent leader in a business, the bucket stops with you. And ultimately, you have to take accountability for that. But also, you expect other people to take accountability. I have twin sons, and the amount of times one of them has done something wrong and their excuse starts with, my brother did. This morning, I asked my son why he didn't have a pajama top on, and his response was, my brother made me laugh, so I spilt my water, so it's my brother's fault. No, it's not your brother's fault. You're not in trouble, it doesn't matter, but you can't keep blaming your brother, and that's making him accountable, and he's 5. The amount of adults, grown adults, and we're talking men and women in their 50s and 60s, even 70s sometimes, do not hold accountability and they're blaming other people. I started Construction Alchemy, which is one of my businesses, to support subcontractors, because I didn't like the way that the industry bashed them, depending on the size of the contractor, obviously. But some subcontractors, when they're losing £10,000, makes a big impact to their business a lot of the time. I mean, it depends on the size of the subcontractors. There are subcontractors out there that have multi-million-pound turnovers. And so I started Construction Alchemy to support them, to educate them, to empower them. And as I started working with some of these contractors, not all of them, but there was valid reason why some of these subcontractors weren't getting paid, because they weren't delivering. There were valid reasons why their subcontractors, so the subcontractors, were sending adjudications in and getting debt collectors, because they weren't paying, and there was no valid reason not to pay. And the whole purpose of this being called Taking the Con Out of Construction, there are a lot of con artists in this industry. There are a lot of people that don't do what they're supposed to do, that don't play by the rules, that can't be bothered to fill in the form or do things properly, and they're not accountable. And I've said to people like, oh, here's this, my smallest violin in the world, as I rub my fingers together. The amount of times I stood there and I've listened to subcontractors saying the same old crap day in, day out, I just roll my eyes and like, oh, yawn. I'm bored of it. Take accountability. If you've made a mistake, we're human. Own up. Now, I can't guarantee that every time you own up to making a mistake, that people not take advantage of it, because you need to be careful with who you're dealing with. As a main contractor's QS or developer's QS, if a contractor's come up to me and said, hey, I've messed up, the amount of times that I'm like, okay, fine, what's the situation, what we're going to deal with? Let's get you out of this. Because ultimately, I don't want any contractors to go bust. That subcontractor going bust doesn't help me. That contractor losing money doesn't help me. It's about what's right for the project moving forward and what's right for my client, but also what's right for both parties. If a subcontractor is expecting to make, I don't know, 50% profit or 30% profit or something ridiculous, and they've made a mistake, they're not entitled to make that profit. They're not entitled because they haven't done the work and they haven't done that. If you manage to make 50% profit on your projects, good on you. And if that's within the budget that you've got, then fine, everything's great. But if you've made a mistake and you haven't done something properly, you don't necessarily deserve to have maximum profits when you've made the mistake. It's not making the mistake that's the issue. It's how you deal with that mistake that's important. A client of mine phoned me up the other day, panicking because they'd employed a subcontractor. They thought they'd done their due diligence, but they were trying to cut corners and had a contractor doing groundworks and electrical works. As soon as they told me what they'd done, I was a bit like, they're not two trades that necessarily connect well together, because they're very, very different. Anyway, it was an absolute mess. They were really embarrassed because there was a big director from one of their other sites that happened to be on site that day, one of those sort of scenarios. I said to them, listen, I can't guarantee what's going to happen. Like, I can't tell you how your client's going to feel. I can't tell you how they're going to look at this. But what I will say is how you respond to a problem speaks volumes. We are human beings. Things do happen. Mistakes are made. Contractors let you down. It's the construction industry. We all know it. And anyone that's been in it for more than 5 minutes is going to understand that. But how you resolve that situation, how you deal with that situation speaks volumes, definitely in my eyes. And I'm not the only person out there that feels like that. And sometimes we just have to say, hey, hold my hands up, I made a mistake. If you can rectify the situation without anybody knowing about it, amazing. If you can deliver something amazing. If it's going to cost you money, then sometimes you have to take that. If it's going to cause you to go into bankruptcy and it's that big of a deal, then you need to take accountability for that. And I'm not saying you deserve to go bankrupt, but ultimately you have to take responsibility. But if you're human about it, it's how you deal with it. I remember the old saying, and I've heard it thousands and thousands of times, every time you're pointing a finger, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. And that has always resonated with me, because all the time we're looking at other people, we're not looking at ourselves. I've done a lot of internal work. I've had to get through a lot of trauma. Life has happened to me far more than most other people. And I've had to deal with that. And I've had to look in the mirror and I've had to look at myself, and I've made mistakes. But it's how I've learned from those mistakes that are important. I mean, I remember used to joking around with my friends years ago. And I actually found comfort in the fact that so much life happened to me and they were watching me go through it, supporting me as friends do, but learning by my mistakes. And that actually made some of the hard lessons that I learned much easier. It's been exactly the same in business. So I'm talking like from when I was 17, 18 years old, making mistakes. I mean, living by yourself at 18, I think, got a 19-year-old daughter, and I wouldn't want her living on her own. And it makes you realize what you went through. But I've taken accountability for my actions. I've stood up and I will say, I'm sorry if I'm in the wrong. I will turn and say, I've made a mistake, and hold my hands up, and I will be accountable. I stand by my word. And at the moment on LinkedIn, for example, there's a lot of doom and gloom and people shouting about this and complaining about things, that the choices that they've made. And it's very frustrating. It's not what makes the world go round, and it's no good for business. It's no good for life and society in general. So accountability is key. As I've said before, when you're not delivering, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you've got the right systems and process in place. If you're not delivering, it's going to be a problem. If you're not held accountable for your own mistakes, if you're not keeping an eye on your managers, if you're not making sure you've got the right systems and processes in place, if you're not supporting your team, if you're not training your team, if you're not employing the right people, you're going to have problems. I'm not saying we're all perfect, but like I said in the last episode, we were talking about the introduction of fractional directors, whether it be commercial, operational, finance, whatever it may be, the whole fractional facility that's come from COVID. Ultimately, there's no excuse now for any business not to get the right advice. There's no excuse, because it's out there. Yeah, you might not be able to have a C-suite team, because you haven't got, I don't know, potentially 2, 3, 400,000 pounds worth of budget to employ those people, but you definitely can employ someone once a month for them to come and help you and learn from them and educate yourselves. And with AI and the way that technology is going, there is no excuse for not understanding. It's so simple these days on ChatGPT, even Google. Look into Google and Google can tell you exactly how to write a contract or how to build a wall. I mean, Jesus, you could probably service your car now with videos and whatever on the information that we've got. So there is no excuse for not understanding or not knowing, and accountability is key. I mentioned earlier about everything is the leader's responsibility, and it is. And I'm not saying that you have to be responsible for everybody's actions. You have to make people accountable. It's more common than I ever expected it to be. A company will call me because they're having cash flow issues and they want me to either recoup some debt, which I don't know why companies contact me to recoup debt. I'm not debt recovering, but I can help them with that sometimes. But the amount of times I've spoken to a contractor and they may have a 10, 15 million pound turnover and they tell me they're making 20% profit, but they've got no cash. That makes no sense. 20% profit on a £1 million turnover is £200,000 a year. Profit. Profit doesn't mean overhead. So you can have overheads and profit, but overheads are overheads. A lot of people get confused. The fact that they think their overheads are a certain value. They're only a certain value if they're fixed, which they never are, but you can have a rough idea. But that value is depending on your turnover and your sales. So if your sales aren't coming in at 10 million, then your percentage is not going to be the same of your overheads if you're only bringing in 5 million. Now, you need to be accountable for that. You need to understand your figures. Some of the clients that are the most successful, I only help them out on the odd occasion when they've got a problem with a particular contract. We catch up all the time, don't get me wrong. The only time I actually have to do any work is when they've got an issue with the client. But the leaders of those businesses know exactly what's going on. They keep a track on their management accounts. They get proper management accounts done. They know where their profit and losses are at. They know what the balance sheet is saying. They know what money they're making on the jobs. They know what their net overheads are. They know what profit they're going to be making. They know what they're declaring on the gross, and they understand. Now, they understand because they've employed someone that's done that for them. Now, a lot of leaders won't be dealing with that on a daily basis, but they will make sure they're getting that information to make the right decision. They don't quite understand how to do something, so they ask the right questions. They ask me, how do I do this? How do I do that? And sometimes I've sat in meetings or in their office while they're on the phone to somebody, and I'm holding up signs saying, don't forget this or don't forget that, or I'm there supporting them while they're having this conversation. But they're learning from me. And ultimately, when you're a leader of a business, you can never know it all. And you have to make yourself accountable and you have to be growing, but you also have to make your team accountable. And that's not coming in and shouting and screaming and being a T-Rex in your business. It's about making sure that you are accountable, your door is open, you're a good leader, you're responsible for your team, you're responsible for your business, you're making the right decisions, but also you're making people accountable for giving you the information that you need to make decisions. And if something isn't quite right in your business, don't just bury your head in the sand. If you're making £10 million a year and you think you're making 20% profit, who's told you you're making 20% profit and where's your proof? You can't just decide that you're making 20% profit because somebody said they've put 20% markup. Markup and profit are not the same thing. So you have to understand business. You have to understand accounts. You have to take your responsibilities as a director, as issued by Companies House, is a legal requirement. You need to read that. You need to be aware of what that is and make yourself accountable. And if you don't know how to do what you need to do, you don't understand that aspect of your business, and you should employ someone to either train you or do it for you. And I read something recently, I think it was a post on LinkedIn or something like that, about delegation and what good delegation is. And delegation is not just giving all the things that you don't want to do or that annoy you to somebody else. Real delegation and real leadership is actually giving somebody something that's important and trusting them to own that. So giving them ownership of that task, but also giving them the credit and the ownership of the result. So if that task ends up in a positive result, they get the credit for it. You don't. On the same aspect, if that person takes on that role and they don't deliver, you make them accountable for it. And I don't mean you sack them or chastise them or put them under special measures or anything like that. It's okay, as a leader, I've given you this task, I trusted with this task, you haven't delivered, why have you not delivered? And as a leader, you need to hold yourself accountable and go, right, did I give this person the tools that they needed to be successful? First of all, you need to define what success looks like for that particular task. That's your responsibility as a leader. You need to make sure that they understand that task. And this goes through all aspects of business. whether it be a subcontractor, whether it be your main contractor, whether it be a client. One of the very first episodes that we did was about contracts. It goes back to contracts and being accountability, but not just JCT contracts with your clients and your subcontractors. You're talking about contracts with your employees, like any contract in any aspect. The idea of it is to have an alignment of expectations, but also it gives you the opportunity to hold each other accountable. And that's what's important with any contract and any agreement. So when you're delegating, one, you need to make sure that expectations are aligned. They fully know what they're supposed to be doing. They need to have the tools available to deliver that. They need to have the skills available. Now, they may not have the skills at the time that you delegate them. And if they don't have that skill set that's required, it doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means they need a bit more support. Have you supported them? Or have you connected with someone that can support them? And ultimately, if you give a task to somebody as a leader of a business and the owner, founder, whatever title you want to give yourself in the business, and they fail, it's not necessarily on them. You also need to take that accountability. Have you defined success? Have you given them all the tools in order for them to be successful, supported them? Have you given them everything they need? Or is it the fact that they just haven't bothered? They haven't listened to it. They've been held up by fear, or they just didn't want to, or they haven't got out of bed or whatever. I mean, if you've got someone that is toxic or doesn't want to work or is constantly calling in sick or whatever it may be, like there's no such thing as the perfect employee all the time. There are bad eggs. There are toxic people. And if that's the case, there's laws and employment things. And I'm not going to go into that because I'm not qualified to discuss it. But there are methods that you need to place if you've got someone that's toxic in your business. But ultimately, was a role defined in the first place? Did you interview them properly? So we can all blame the person and say, well, this person's been employed and it was their problem, they were toxic. But actually, when there is an issue in your business, you have to look at it a bit more forensically and say, well, I've got this person has become toxic. Now, I don't believe that people are born toxic. They become toxic by their environment. A lot of people are not aware of their own toxicity. They'll be very quick to pick up on other people's toxic behaviors. And sometimes people don't actually know how toxic they are. There's probably been environments that I've been toxic. It's highly likely because that's just life and how we deal with our traumas and other bits and pieces. But that's a whole different subject. But when things go wrong in your business, you need to find out why it went wrong. Was it avoidable? Who was accountable? Who was issued? Did you employ the right person? If you didn't employ the right person, why? Did you have the right job description? Did you use a recruitment agent? There's a number of things that you need to have a look at and see what was happened within that process. And it's the same with the project. When I go into a project that's in crisis, especially, I'm very good at looking at 30 different things at once. And I'm very good at honing on to the detail when I need to, but I'm also very good at looking at the big picture at the same time. Don't quite know how I do it, but I do. And a lot of the times there will be an issue and you can see the gap. So I can see where money's been hemorrhaging. I can see a gap in delivery. Somebody's not done this, somebody's not done that. Somebody hasn't been trained properly, somebody in the wrong job or in a job that doesn't suit them, in a job they don't enjoy, they haven't got the right training. There's so many different things. But when you have a problem with a project, there are first things that I look at, and it's, for example, is a tender documentation been handed over properly? Is a person running the project aware of what was allowed for when they priced it? Have they had a handover? Have they said, right, this is what we priced, or this is what we priced, or we've projected this, or we've changed this, or we value engineered this? Does the person that's tendered the document, are they running the job? If they're not and they're handing it over, has it been handed over properly? What's your process in handing that over? Have you given that person everything they need in order to be successful? Because if you haven't, it doesn't matter how good this person is, you're setting them up for failure. So once they've got this, are you creating CVRs? Are you comparing what you tendered, what your contract sum is, and what you're actually delivering? Is there a process? Is that being watched? Are you making decisions on whether or not you should charge a client that you've got repeat work from an extension of time? Do you know how much the project has cost for that extension of time? Do you know how much your project managers are costing? Do you know how much time your project manager is spending on site? Do you know what his expenses are? Do you know what his mileage or his day rate is? Or how much PPE he uses, or how much his car is costing you? Or do you know the cost of that extension? Can you make a decision with the right information? Do you have the right information? Are you checking what people are doing, or are you just employing someone and thinking, well, look at their CV, they've got a degree in accountancy, whatever it may be, therefore I'm going to let them run my business? And I'm not saying micromanage, because I don't think that's the right answer, but do you understand your employees? Because there are some people that like to have freedom and say, right, this is what you need to do in the month, or this is your job role, deliver, adios. Any problems, I'm here, you do your thing. And some people thrive in those environments. Other people need to know what they're doing wrong so that they can improve. They actually get a buzz and a kick out of you didn't quite do this right, you did this right, so can you improve this? And then next minute, like, right, I've improved. And they're all about efficiency, improving your efficiency and becoming more productive and all the rest of it. And sometimes they need to be micromanaged at the very beginning. It might be a confidence thing. Many people suffer from imposter syndrome, and the only way of getting around that is constant that reassurance. Some people like to have a mixture of the two. Some people are motivated by being in an office space and being sociable. Others like to be a bit of a hermit and like to work from home. And if you're a leader, motivation of your team is totally up to you. Yes, okay, it goes down to the management. You have to motivate those managers that then motivate their team. Are your team aware of the different types of people they have working for you? You have different archetypes that are motivated in different ways. If your team isn't motivated, whose responsibilities are? It's the leaders. Yes, there are sub-responsibilities. Of course there are. Because if you've got a big team, there's a hierarchy and you need to follow that. And the way that your business works and the structure of your business is designed for a reason. But if it starts growing and goes a bit wonky and isn't suddenly working, change it. You're the owner. It's your business. It's your rules. You can change anything you want. You don't have to go because you worked in a company years ago and they did it this way. You don't have to do it in any other way. Like, I never go into a company like with a framework of this is what we're going to do, because every company is different. And the reason every company is different is because it's a combination of different people and people are unique. And I think we're losing a little bit of that because so many people are judging people by a criteria, whether it be the color of their skin, the profession, the title, the sex, the religion. People are judging too many people and trying to put them in boxes. And actually, that's not the right thing to do. If we're going to be really successful, we need to be individuals and treat people differently. And obviously, holding accountability, like, it's a big thing that's really annoying me at the moment, where everyone is blaming everybody else for their problems and nobody seems to be looking in the mirror. I'm one of those people that tends to hold mirrors up to people quite a lot, and people either love me for it or hate me for it. I believe we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place, which is the whole purpose of this podcast. The way that I've changed the way I'm operating in the construction space is using my very unique skill set, my extremely unique life experiences, the way that I am, who I am, my strengths, my weaknesses, to change the construction industry, because that's the most powerful place that I can change things. I'm actively working to support women in construction because there's not enough of them. And I do believe getting more women in construction is going to help because we have a different skill set. And actually, there needs to be a lot more of that skill set in the construction industry. And I think there'll be a lot more success in the construction industry if there's a lot more women with that skill set and the way that we work, and we're slightly differently in how we operate towards men. And there's a balance that needs to be there. It's very male dominated, which is not saying women are better, they're different. And where you've got so many men in an industry is actually much, much better when you can balance that out. So it's unbalanced. So I do believe in that. And I'm actively supporting women in the construction industry with mentorships and education. But I also think that there is a general lack of education when it comes to the construction industry. Obviously, I've spoken about the JCT contract, supporting people doing workshops just to help people understand what their rights are and to empower them to make better decisions and to be supported in construction and have systems and processes and all the other things. This podcast is a passion, and it's about sharing my wisdom and everything I've learned to the masses, and it's available for anyone and it's free. And then also the other thing that I'm focusing on in the industry through H2 is construction projects that are in trouble and commercial protection, because I've been there when the administrators march in, and I know the impact of a company going bust, not just on the company itself and who works for it, but how that trickles down to all the subcontractors and the one-man bands and the suppliers and all the smaller people. And when a big company goes bust, how it affects people on this ground level is devastating. There's a lot has happened in 2025. A lot of companies have gone bust, and I know a lot of people that are in difficult situations because of it. So where I'm trying to actively work in for 2026 is helping funders so that they can deliver projects, and maybe they don't make the return that they're expecting to, but coming out evens is better than losing, and losing a little is better than losing a lot. So I'm going to be actively working for funders to try and turn their projects around that they've invested in. I'm trying to get to contractors and trying to change their mindset of actually letting me look at projects before you're about to go bust. Look at your company before it's going bust. If you've got an inkling that there's something not quite right with your project, or you're being told that the project's fine, but you've got a gut feeling saying that it's not, then let me come in and help you. In fact, in a couple of podcasts time, I'm going to talk about having a look at where a project really is, where you should be looking and how you should be looking at it to see where your project really is rather than where you think it is. And part of accountability is actually being fully aware of what's really happening, not living in dreamland. Great having motivation and visions and dreams, and that's amazing and that's great, and I do recommend it. But you also need to keep one foot on the ground and say, what is the reality? So yeah, we can all do affirmations and say, I'm calling it abundance and I'm earning 50 million a year. If we start spending the 20% profits of the 50 million we haven't even made yet, then that's a problem. And that's going to cause an issue. So there's having that balance of, yes, this is where I want to be, and having that vision and having that entrepreneurial spirit and that drive, and you want to go places. That's amazing. You have to keep one foot on the ground and think, actually, okay, this is where I want to be, but where am I now? Where is this project going? Is it on time? And it's great for someone to say, we've won this project and we predict we're going to make 20% profit on it, or 10 or 15 or 100 grand, whatever it is. But you need to keep a track on that, because it doesn't always stay that way. Yes, what you want to make and what you actually make are often very, very different. But who's tracking that all the way through? So we spoke about bond accounts. We spoke about lots of aspects of business. And if you haven't listened to the podcast on those particular elements, I do recommend you go back to them, because unless you understand each element and really understand each element, then the whole business is going to be affected in some ways. The H squared is about protecting more businesses from going bust, basically. Keeping the money flowing, keeping things working, keeping people's head above waters. And then hopefully when they get through these difficult circumstances, they learn from that. And then if they get the right systems and processes in place, and I help with their mindset and I help with their systems and understanding what they're supposed to be doing and understanding the law and understanding all these different things and what these terms mean and what you should be doing and the best way of doing it. Once they understand that, then you get a good foundation, then you're there ready for growth. And so the amount of companies that can come from literally being on the breadline of about to go into administration that ended up then getting exponential growth is not uncommon, and it's possible. But it does take hard work, and it does take a good hard look in the mirror, because many construction projects I've gone into that are in disaster or in trouble, it's not that project that's gone wrong. It's either 3 projects before where nobody rectified the situation or didn't get the funding or didn't cut back or whatever it may be, haven't taken accountability, responsibility, and just pretended that it didn't exist. That's often what affects the project, or there is an issue with leadership. So accountability is on everyone. It's not people looking at their boss. Yes, it's always the boss's fault, and I agree with that, and people might not like that, but that's what I believe. But also it's our fault. So it's about individual accountability, holding other people accountable, holding yourself accountable, but also as a group, we are all responsible for this universe. We're all responsible for the economy to some extent. We're all responsible for the way that we treat other people. We're all responsible for our community, and we are all accountable. And holding ourselves accountable and other people accountable is the way to success, as far as I'm concerned.
This episode is a powerful reminder that accountability isn't about control. It's about ownership. When roles are clear and responsibility is understood, people stop passing problems along and start solving them. Thank you so much, Michelle.
You're welcome.
If you found value in today's episode, hit subscribe so you never miss a new release, and share it with someone in the industry who needs to hear it. To learn more, access resources, or find out how Michelle Carr and Construction Alchemy can help you protect your projects, solve problems, and boost your profits, visit constructionalchemy.co.uk. Together, we can change the industry, one project, one company, and one episode at a time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are based on the personal experiences of Michelle Carr and her guests. They are for general information only and should not be relied upon as professional or legal advice. Always seek your own independent advice before making decisions. Neither Michelle Carr nor Construction Alchemy accepts liability for any loss, damage, or consequences arising from actions taken based on this podcast. Thank you for listening.